Hi everybody, my name is Marcia Duran and we're here today to interview Franklin Donny D. Lewis, the host of Behind the Curtains, the host of Blog Talk Radio's Soul Sundays. Soul Gumbo is a news show, and the author of 2 books, Single Mother's Guide to Raising Black Boys, and his newest book is From Crack to Christ. And Franklin,
Hello.
tell me or tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I started as a young man in Los Angeles, California, growing up in the city, listening to soul radio, KGFJ on my 6 transistor radio, and some of KRLA rock music. But the DJs, they had so much power in those days. You know, they talked to the community. They had such cool voices. And I wanted to be like those guys. I couldn't sing, so what was the next best thing?
Right.
So I got into that and just listening. And next thing you know, we moved to a town called Pomona, California. No soul stations. It just really broke my heart. We had Wolfman Jack, XCRB. And we had the jazz station 105. So I found myself listening to jazz, and on 105 they had some of the best DJs. Jammin' J. Rich, Rick Holmes. These guys were so cool and so smooth. So I really listened to those guys a lot. And I started doing parties with one guitar amplifier, microphone, and a turntable, fast hands, and telling jokes in between, flipping records. And it seemed to work. People liked it, and I gave myself the name Donny D. And it was for disco back in the days. And it seemed to stick. Next thing I knew, I was getting calls from nightclubs to come and do that kind of work and doing their parties. And I worked with a lot of famous people in some of those nightclubs. One of the clubs I worked at was called Chocolate City, and in Pomona, and we had guests that would come through. Taste of Honey came through before they were known for Boogie Oogie. Lakeside used to come through. They were Ohio Lakeside Express. We had Howard Hewitt come through of Shalimar fame, but he was with a group called Beverly Hills at the time. Oh, Eddie Kendricks, Bloodstone, a lot of people came through that club. Anyway, I got a chance to rub elbows and feel those. And then I had a friend over at KSBC in Claremont, College Station, and I went over there and I did a show called Jazz for a Sunday Night, and things were going good.
Wonderful. So this was in your high school and college days.
Correct.
Okay. And so what happened after you left college?
Well, I barely got through college, because my drug addiction hit, and it started to hit hard. I started drinking alcohol, vodka and fruit punch, and then that led to marijuana, which led to pills, Red Devils to bring you down, Bennies to bring you back up. Then that led to the psychedelics. Thank God I'm still alive today. To the psychedelics, and then the angel dust and Sherm hit, came through the community and wiped out a bunch of us, took me down, and then the devil of all devils hit, crack cocaine. It started off with the powder. You take a whiff, but then people started freebasing it, and then they started pre-rocking it. And once that happened, they went to community, took a lot of soldiers out, and I skipped on a part where before that happened, I was a president of a BSU in Pomona, at Pomona High, and there was a lot of strong brothers, and I had to watch all the strong brothers, including myself, when the drugs hit, fall down like, we became puppies, wagging our tail.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you became addicted.
Yes.
And where did your life lead from there?
Well, during addiction, I have to say I was a functioning addict. I thought I was hiding it from everybody and my wife and my kids, and actually I wasn't. But when you're addicted, you don't think of that. You don't think of family, wife, holidays, birthdays. You just think about where that next hit's coming from when you get hooked on this right here, that pipe. And I worked for the school district. I had worked probation department. I had a lot of good jobs, and I stuck with the school district for 32 years. I'm retired now. But, I seem to be able to, after a night of partying, have myself ready for school the next morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was tough.
Yeah. So you were a functioning addict.
Functioning addict, yes indeed.
Yeah. God had you here for a reason.
Yes, and I do know this. I do know this.
Yes, because I know a lot of people that didn't make it.
Right.
Didn't make it.
And so you're right, and so do I. And sometimes it takes you to get on your bottom, and everybody's bottom is different. I had to lose family, cars, house, everything but my life and my job for me to get down on my knees, go across the street to the Catholic Church and ask God to come into my life. And, God came into my life and started opening up doors, but it was little by little. First, he sent me up to Mother Evans at a Refuge Christian Center in Altadena. Big shout out to Refuge Christian Center because they basically saved my life, Mother Evans. And she got me involved with the youth group, and we had a what we call the something cafe. I forgot the name of it, but we had a group that met every Wednesday night. We had about 100 students that came in. We tutored and taught, and that was real good. And I started to feel like I belonged to something different. All the people that I hung with, and during the drugs, I just stayed away from them. When they saw me, hey Frank, come on, let's party. And I was showing my tattoo right here, if you guys can see it, and it says blessed. And I told them, this is how I party now. And they didn't want to hear that. They had influenced by the devil. And so things came slowly but surely, and I'll tell you a little bit about how it went on from there.
Okay, so go ahead and continue with that.
Okay, well, during that time, my wife and I separated, and the kids went one way with her, and one daughter stayed with me for a while till she couldn't take it anymore. And then I stayed at the house by myself, lights getting cut and different things being cut off, and it kind of basically turned into a crack house for a while. Until I had one person staying, a lady and her 2 kids, and I just couldn't have that. And I asked them to leave, and they refused. I'm not going anywhere. I had to call the police to get them out of there. Wow. It was a tough situation, but that went on, and but I found myself, still working. Trying to find my way, and the Lord led me to doing background work. My mother and sister did background work for a casting company, and they worked on different TV shows and different movies. And when I found that out, wow, here's my big chance. So I signed up with the company, and it was a black company, but they wouldn't give me no work. So you're supposed to call up, or they call you, and if they had a part or something that fit your description. So I hung in there for a while, and then a friend of my son, Che Skizza, that was his rapping name, but he had a friend, Coke Daniels, and Coke had directed and produced some films like, I think it was Baby's Mama, and a couple other movies that he directed and produced and wrote. And he did a film called Who Made the Potato Salad with Jaleel White and some other folks. and they called me to be an extra. Come on down. So on that shoot at Lincoln Park and in Los Angeles, I had a couple of little scenes in there, and if you pick up DVD, you'll see me. But all the extras were, they had their vouchers where they were getting paid. I didn't have a voucher. I wasn't getting paid, but God sent me there for a reason. Now ask me what the reason was.
What was the reason God sent you there?
The reason that God sent me there was for me to find out how everyone else in that business was getting over.
Okay.
And when I talked to people, everybody would say, oh man, Central Casting. Some said LA Casting, but everybody would say Central Casting, Central Casting. And I remember hearing in the old 1940 movies and stuff, they were making jokes about, he looked like he came from Central Casting. So I went and looked up Central Casting, the largest casting company in the world. So anyway, I signed up with them. And after that, I was getting calls to work on ER, different TV shows. I've worked on a lot of different TV shows. NYPD Blue, How I Met Your Mother, The Shield. I can't even remember Heroes. A lot of different TV shows and movies. The Longest Yard. I worked on that, and you name it was in that movie.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Wow. Okay, so that was a positive direction for you.
Yes. So after that, I was working with some youth, and I worked with this one young man, and he's a black young man, and he was raised by a Jewish family, his Jewish mother, and his black father wasn't on the scene. So he didn't know too much about his culture. He knew the Jewish culture, and I remember one time being with him, and they was telling him what they was going to have for dinner, and he said, I don't want no matzah fry. I don't want to eat matzah fry. I didn't know what matzah fry was, I'd heard of matzah balls, but I didn't know what matzah fry was. But anyway, he wanted to learn his black culture. He showed me his hip-hop music, and he wanted to have all these questions about the food in the community. So when I would pick him up, I'd take him to Los Angeles. We'd go to the Crenshaw Mall. We'd go to the different soul food and fried chicken places that he wanted to know about.
Right.
Then I took him to other different cultural spots where he could learn, African American Museum, and just a lot of different places. But his mother, I'll never forget me, she called one night and said she is so tired of him. Mm-hmm. So asked me what she's tired of.
What was she tired of?
She was tired of his behavior. She said he used to go in the refrigerator, take the juice, drink it all up, put the empty bottle back in the refrigerator, especially the apple juice.
Oh my.
Yeah. So and he would stomp through the house. He didn't clean his room. Frank, what should I do with him? What can I do? And I said, I can give you a couple of hints. And then God just said, write a book about it.
Oh, okay.
Write a
So
book
that's
about
how you came to write Single Mother's Guide to Raising Black Boys.
Yes.
All right.
And being raised by a single mother, we raised 5 of us, 3 boys, 2 girls, and she started on welfare, matter of fact, and ended up being a nurse, an RN, and bought a couple of homes, and I saw her work ethic. But anyway, being single, or being from a single parent, and people would ask me later, how do you know about single mothers raising black boys? And I also had to tell them, working in special ed, working in the school district, a lot of the black young men that I ran into were raised by grandparents, foster care, grandmother, and single mothers.
Right.
So I knew a little bit about it. And so I wrote down my experiences. Mm-hmm. And I would tell people, this book is not a magic wand. I have things in this book about, surrogate fathers. Some people would tell me how a woman can't raise a boy to be a man, And I'm like, true. You know, he does need some help. But she can do a whole lot. My mother raised me, and a lot of mothers out there raised their sons, great sons. And this book was only a guide and some tips and things you should do in here. And you know, there's things in this book such as role models, finding people that make good role models for your son. It doesn't necessarily have to be a family member, but if you have a family member, that's great. Someone from the church community, a coach, you know. But they also say, check these people out too, you know. And get us that would be like a surrogate father, someone to step in. I had one, a couple of them, grandfathers and cousins. And we got things like special ed, rites of passage, kept kid, twins. Kept kid, I want to hit on that. A lot of mothers feel that since they're working on their own and the father's not there, that they feel that it's their fault, and that it is not your fault, and that you have to overcompensate and do this and do that and do this for your son, which in my opinion only makes him weaker, you know, and it doesn't make him stronger. You know, you do what you do, but you don't do over what you should do. You know that if he's coming home with D's and F's on his report card, you don't go buy the new iPhone. You don't buy him the new Jordans until he brings those things up.
Right.
You know? And that's basically where that came from. Single Mother's Guide to Raising Black Boys.
All right. Okay. So tell us about From Crack to Christ.
Woo! Yes, indeed. This is my new book, From Crack to the number 2, Christ, Part 1. There's a couple other copies out there with this title, but mine was copyrighted first. But anyway, make sure you get the original, the OG. Now, it started as we were talking about my addictions. Mm-hmm. This book is basically stories and tales of a lot of the things that went on in my life during my addiction. We all have stories and a testimony. You have a testimony. The man behind the camera right there has a testimony. We all have a testimony. The pastor at the church wasn't always a pastor at the church.
Right.
You know, the teacher in the school has a background too. Mm-hmm. You know, and I was telling my granddaughter, if you read this book, you'll probably find out some things you didn't know about your grandfather, you know. But that was back then. But it's just some stories, it tells about that. And it's also for, like I said, for parents, loved ones, friends who don't know addiction. It's easy to go home and tell your son, stop doing those drugs. Get your act right. Pull your pants up. Get a job. Yeah, that all sounds nice and easy, but it's not. When you're under attack, and only way you can get from under attack is if you're ready, and you hit your bottom, and you want to change your life. For me, it was the Lord Jesus Christ. That's how I got out of it. I went to meetings, and I remember going to a lot of different meetings. AACANA, Altadena. A guy came in one night, worked at the local market up here, Altadena Market. He said, Frank, there's going to be a fantastic speaker down at Refuge Christian Center. So I left the meeting and I went down to the church. It was walking distance. And
I want to
go ahead.
Butt in here.
Yes.
Because I remember you talking about one day you were walking down the street and you found the Bible.
Amen. I forgot all about that. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, well, before I even thought about God, Jesus Christ, the Lord might be my answer, I was walking down Lincoln and Washington, And there was on the corner was a big stone. And on top of this stone was a book. And it was open and the pages were blowing in the wind. I went to go see what the book was, and it was the Bible. I have that Bible, and this was 30 years ago.
Wow.
I still have that Bible at the house today. And that was sort of like, God's trying to tell you something, Donny D. You know.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's absolute truth.
It's like the hand of God just saying, here.
Right. It
You
was,
know,
it was blowing.
this is what you need.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
But you know, he gives us signals. And as you recall, one time we were hiking up near South Pasadena, and it was trees with no leaves. It looked bare,
Yeah,
and there sat a white dove
right.
with a glow. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
And we took a picture of it, and then we saw the glow. But it was just sitting there as to say, God is here with you.
Yes.
And we came back, it was gone, right? And every time I pass there, I look for that white
I know,
dove.
I know. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Because he will talk to you, you know. But this worked for me. And I don't try to tell everybody to go find Jesus Christ or go read the Holy Quran or whatever you want to do. But for me, Jesus Christ worked. That's why I call this book From Crack to Christ. Now, my life is not perfect. I don't think anyone out there's lives are perfect either. Only one's life that I know was perfect was the Lord Jesus Christ.
That is all.
You know? And he walked amongst the sinners, such as myself, and he delivered. And that is where I am right now.
Okay, so tell us about your radio shows.
Okay, now I started this show, the first one, Donny D's Words of Wisdom, because when I wrote this book, I could barely get a interview.
Right.
My first interview was with Doretha, can't remember her last name, but she was at Pasadena Media back in the old days at the old studio, and she gave me an interview. But it was hard to get interviews, so I started my own podcast and started promoting it myself. And it was called Donny D's Words of Wisdom on Blog Talk Radio, Saturday nights from 6 to 9 Pacific Standard Time. But then, you know, a lover of old soul music, well, going back to that, we just talked to politics and whatever, played music. It really wasn't structured. It was just me talking and playing music. Sometimes you'd be on. And then we went from there to Donny D's Soul Sundays. And that came on Sunday nights, same time, 6 to 9 Pacific Time on Blog Talk Radio. And it's still, both of them still going strong now. Then we went to you from Words of Inspiration.
Right.
And you tell them about that.
Well, Words of Inspiration was a segment where I would interview preachers, ministers, and gospel singers, and people with inspirational stories. So it was a good spin.
Yes, indeed. And
Very good.
yeah, you've had some pretty good guests on there.
Yes. Nathan Best from the OJs.
Yes.
Chris Jasper from
Isley Brothers.
the Isley Brothers.
Right.
And Jerry Cummings, a former member of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, to name a few.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So then we did those. We are still doing those. And then we have a new show that's every other Saturday next from Words of Inspiration. And that's Donny D Soul Gumbo, where we highlight Zydeco, reggae, jazz, and blues for you and yours. And that's on Saturday nights too on Blog Talk Radio.
I want to add one thing
Yes.
that I'll never forget.
Yes.
Was the first show, your guest was Melba Moore. We didn't even have music.
No, we
for that show. We've come a long way.
Yes, it's about 12 years ago, huh?
Yeah, she was great, and I always think back to that
Yeah.
humble beginning.
Yeah, first
And
Melba Moore, big star.
really.
And okay, so
Yeah.
what else you want to know?
Oh, what else? Okay, your books. Tell us about the books.
Okay.
Where to get them?
Single Mother's Guide to Raising Black Boys and From Crack to Christ, Part 1. You can find them by Googling my name, Franklin Donny D. Lewis. Google them up. Any place that you get your books from, you can get them from there online.
Right.
Okay.
All right. What else would you like to
Oh,
share
well, you want to
with
know?
us?
Well, I like to tell
What would you
people
like
how
to
to
share?
contact me.
Oh, how can people contact you, Franklin?
Well, you can find me on Facebook under Franklin Lewis. You can find me on Instagram, IG, Franklin Lewis. I have a new website that's coming out for this book. It's franklindonnyd.com. It should be up by the time you see this segment of Behind the Curtains. And that's how you can find me. And I just wanted to throw something in about Behind the Curtains. I host Behind the Curtains, and Marcia Dees and I are producers, but the main producer is a guy, executive producer, is a guy named Eric Bailey. And one day I was at work, and he worked for the school district too, and I was at work at Pasadena High School. He pulled up in his truck, and I didn't even know he knew anything about Soul Sundays. And he came to me and said, "How'd you like to bring that to TV?" And I said, "Yeah, can we do it tomorrow?" So he said, "Give me about a week or so." And he called me and said, "Okay, this is the date that we're going to shoot the first show." And we shot the first show maybe 5 years ago. And we're still around today. And we're shooting from a different studio right now because it's closed down due to COVID-19.
Right.
Yeah, but we said we had to keep going. And we're still shooting Behind the Curtains. You can find that, all of our shows, on YouTube. Look up Donny D's Soul Sundays on YouTube and look at all of the different shows. We've had a lot of great guests on there.
Mm-hmm.
That's Behind the Curtains.
Yes.
Well,
Well,
it's been fun.
yes, it has.
We got to run.